Welcome to Pixel Therapy, the video game podcast where we look at the games we play through the lens of the player, or what you play is just as important as how you play it, and where emotional intelligence is a critical stat. I'm your co-host Jamie, pronouns she, they,
And I'm your co-host, Spencer, pronouns they, them.
and this is Pixel Therapy. It feels like it's been a really long time since we've
Yeah,
done a normal podcast episode.
I think because of the PAX
Yeah,
episodes. Yeah, yeah.
it still though
Hello,
feels.
everyone.
Hi, we're back. Here we are. Let's start as we always do with our Patreon shoutouts. This is our special thank you to everyone who's subscribed at our Patreon name in the credits tier. So
Love
that's a
ya.
very big thank you to Genevieve, Lindsay, Pim Hatai, CD Mess, Ava, Alexis, and Thomas. Thank you all so much for your support of the show.
Mhm.
Remember, if you want to get your name in the credits, you can hop on over to patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can subscribe for free to stay up to date on all things pixel therapy, or for as little as $2 a month, I think is a pretty good deal. You can get access to our Patreon exclusive monthly bonus episodes. In our October episode, you can hear Spencer's review of The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, the
Great
first
game.
Legend of Zelda game where you play solely as the princess.
Sorry,
Um,
spoilers. It was
uh,
good.
I thought you were saying that playing as Zelda was spoilers, and I was like, I feel like that was in the trailer. And you can also listen to me talk about how Star Wars Outlaws let me live out my childhood space scoundrel fantasies.
Aw.
So go on over to our Patreon and check out that episode and many more. Many more.
Mhm.
If you're looking for other ways to support the show, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. And you can also check out and subscribe to Pixel Therapy Pod on our YouTube channel, where you can catch us streaming our Let's Play series, Pixel Therapy Plays. It's been a little bit inconsistent as of late because life just keeps lifing. Um,
'Cause
what's
we're
the
human.
what's the saying? When you make plans, God laughs or something like that. I don't believe in God, but there's certainly some cosmic deity that is just like pissing on our plans constantly. Um, but yeah, you can keep tabs on our stream schedule here on Patreon and at YouTube. Well, not here on Patreon and at youtube.com/at pixeltherapypod. And you can like, subscribe, and click the bell icon on YouTube to get notifications every time we go live. And of course,
Mhm.
after all that, know that no matter how you choose to engage with us, we appreciate you being here all the same. All right,
We
it's time to
do.
get cozy. I'm going to try not to burp into my microphone. Pull up an
Thank you.
armchair. Feel free to lie down on the couch. And let's talk about our feeling.
Let's.
Spencer, how are you this fine fall Monday evening?
I'm great. Despite the sun setting earlier and earlier.
Sure is.
I saw something cute today.
Okay.
Um, do you wanna hear about it?
No.
So alright.
I
The
just say,
end.
and then we just move on. Yes, of
And
course I
that's
want to
it.
hear about it.
So Kenneth Shepard, wrote a piece for Kotaku about how, Dragon Age: The Veilguard,
Hmm.
new Dragon Age title coming out the end of this month, I think actually
Yeah,
literally, like,
literally
3
like
days from
2 days.
now,
Yeah, yeah,
31st.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. 3 days.
if you don't know, it's like an RPG fantasy
Hmm.
style. You can make your own character. There's lots of thrilling romance, etc.
Hmm.
Um, so it has an option in the game where you can it's gonna sound basic when I say it, but you're able to, like, declare that your character is transgender.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, this is happening outside of the character creator, first of all. So it's like, let me just read a couple sentences from
Yeah.
Kenneth's
Read.
piece.
Read me a
It
sentence.
says, "This option doesn't take place. This
Sorry.
option doesn't take place in the character creator itself, although you're able to find the aforementioned pronoun and gender selections and even apply top surgery scars to your character there. Rather, it comes a few hours into the game when you unlock your protagonist's quarters in the what becomes the home base for your character. This isn't something you can miss. Blah blah blah. When you're setting up the character's room, one of the items you'll put down is a handheld mirror. This gives your character a moment of self-reflection and the opportunity to add some backstory to your character based on things you included in the character creator. So you can talk about things and make choices in this segment that open up new conversation topics and ways of affecting the story down the line. So, for example, Kenneth talks about, I chose to talk about my tattoos and create a little lore for my hero into the universe. And so, one of the things you can do is actually, while you're looking at yourself in the mirror, comment and confirm on whether you consider your character to be trans. And that's regardless of whatever choices you've made in the character creator. And that unlocks new conversations that you can have with other characters and is something that you can reference throughout the game. I just thought that was really cool because
Yeah, that's
for the
super cool.
most part, even if character creators in games have the option to make yourself trans, like for example, Baldur's Gate 3 was seen as really groundbreaking because you could have whatever body type or body combination you created, you could reflect any large number of different identities and stuff like that. But for this to actually go outside of the character creation is really important because even in most games I can think of, if your character is trans, that still largely lives in your imagination
Mhm.
to determine how that manifests in terms of how your character behaves and interacts with other characters, or it's just blanket acceptance. Like there's nothing that changes or shifts about how your character interacts with others in the world. And I'm not saying that I want a bunch of transphobia in my games or for my
Yeah.
character to be like quote unquote treated differently because of being
Yeah.
trans. It's just that being trans is also something that is part of who you are, and sometimes it's nice to feel seen or to
Mhm.
have, the ability to connect with other characters who might be trans in the game, or just to have something that lives outside of whatever's going on in my head
Mhm.
that colors my interactions with the world and other characters. And so for this to be something that literally is spoken into the world, it's cool. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's
I think
really
it
fucking cool.
addresses a lot of critique that's come up in the past about inclusion and on this level. It's like, yeah, okay, I've made this change in the character creator, and then what? Like, what does
Mhm.
it mean? So
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, yeah, and so often the characters that you design in a character creator tend to be like a bit more flat and like you don't get to put
Mhm.
as much of yourself into them beyond the like aesthetic design of the character.
Yeah.
So giving that, I just think it's super cool. Like even what Kenneth was saying about being able to like create lore around his tattoos. It's just super cool to get to like create your character in more ways than just appearance.
Yes.
Um
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I that sounds super fucking cool. And yeah, just a great step in the right direction for inclusivity, uh,
Yeah,
and diversity in
absolutely.
our games.
Oh, that's such a great point about, yeah, it's going beyond aesthetics and really world building with your character
Yeah.
in the world. It's very immersive.
Mhm.
One more thing I'll add is like as you're reflecting in this scene in the game, there's various options for kind of how you feel about your identity. You can say it says the three options include there's something like you're taking a look in the mirror and you're reflecting on yourself. And the three options are I'm getting there, I love who I am, or it feels good to see the real me. And Kenneth writes, so you can designate your trans identity and also color in where you think they are in their personal journey, which is also great because I think it reflects the fact that like not all trans people are looking in the mirror being like, I was born in the wrong body and now I feel great. Like, like it's not all.
Yeah.
It's actually very rarely as cut and dry as all of that. And so of course it's amazing to have an option that's like, I love who I am. But it's also great to have an option too that's like, I'm getting there. That
Mhm.
was the quote. I'm getting there. Like, I think it speaks to the fact that, transition is not one point into another and you're done. It's kind of this continuous process of becoming. And two, how we identify, like, that can be a complicated personal journey on its own. So, for it to also be inclusive of the many ways that being trans can feel, I love that.
Yeah, I really love
So
that. That's super cool.
So everyone go download Dragon Age the Veilguard.
I don't have time for this.
End of episode.
I don't have time.
I know. Too much is happening.
Oh my god.
It's all happening.
I really want to play it, but yeah.
Yeah. When it's like the dark days of winter and there's nothing other than it'll just be like switching between Metaphor Refantasio
I
and
wish that was
Dragon
the case,
Age.
but I'm just looking at even like my personal calendar between now and the end of December, and I'm just like, I don't know, man.
Less time for this. I
Yeah.
know. How are you? How are you?
Well, now I'm even more stressed than I already was. No, I'm doing okay when I'm not vibrating with existential anxiety. Here
Oh,
on
we're so
this
cooked.
low 1 week before our presidential election here in the
Yeah.
U.S. Oh my god,
Pray for us.
God, I just Anyway, yeah, if I think too long about that, I want to die. But aside
Understandable.
from that, I'm okay. If I'm numbing myself with some metaphor refantasio, which I've
Mhm.
referenced, yeah, it was funny. So I've been playing Metaphor Refantasio a lot. We're gonna actually talk about that on our next podcast episode. But for folks who are in the loop, that's the new release from Atlas, the makers of the Persona games. It's made by the same team that works on Persona, but it's a new like fantasy setting, slightly more. It's a more adult setting than the
Mhm.
Persona games, which are set in high school, but still a lot of those same systems. Still like 100 to 150 hour
Yeah.
RPG.
Endeavor. Yeah.
RPG, yeah, game. Um, yeah, so I've been playing it. I got a PlayStation Portal, um,
Nice.
which,
Did it
it
arrive? Like, you got
it
it in hand?
yes, I have it in hand. Well, I bought one of the original
Nice.
ones, not the new, like, classic release, so I didn't have to wait. I got it
That's
right
me, I'm
away.
waiting.
Spencer's waiting, and, that's a great fucking way to play Metaphor Refantasia. I was doing
Nice.
that last night, just had it in my lap, snuggled up on
Mm,
the couch.
mm.
And, yeah, I was playing it, and I'd been playing it, like, most of the day because lazy Sunday. I mowed the yard, I took the dogs outside, and then I came in and played Metaphor Refantasio for the rest of the afternoon.
Lovely.
But I switched from playing it on the TV to playing it on the handheld, and Colt, my partner, walked by, and he was like, "Wait, what are you playing now?" And I was like, "It's still the
Yeah.
same game." I was like, "This game's like 100 to 150 hours. I'm only 20 hours in." And he's like, "Oh my god." And I'm like, "Yeah, like, this'll be me for the next 2 months."
I've
Like
barely scratched the surface.
Yeah. I liked it from the beginning, but I have, like, turned the corner where it's now, like, really got me hooked.
Oh,
They've
shit.
they've
Okay.
introduced some new characters and stuff that I'm really into. I
Mm.
the initial the very first character, your buddy, you've met Stroll?
Mhm, mhm.
Wait, is it
Stole, yeah.
no,
Stroll.
it's
Oh,
Stroll, right?
yeah, you're
STROAG.
right. It's
Yeah,
Stroll.
he's no Ryuji. Let's just say.
Mhm. I know,
No
it's like he
Ryuji.
wants to be
He wants
Raiji.
to be Ryuji, he's not. Hulkenberg is cool, though.
Oh, I
So
haven't met
I
him
don't yeah,
yet.
you don't have her yet? Okay.
Oh, her, sorry.
Yes. Come on, don't assume.
Okay, I know, I'm
She's
assuming.
cool. She's cool.
Cool.
But yeah, he's fine. He's pretty vanilla.
He's fine. Yeah.
He's fine. He's a little vanilla. He gets there. Like the way the other characters play off of him is better than just him on his own. So
Mm,
anyway, I'm deep in that whole deal. So that's
nice.
that's me right now. I'm enjoying that and trying not to freak out much about everything else
Mhm.
going on.
Mood.
But I took a break from Metaphor Refantasio this
Mm,
weekend to
a
play
short break.
a short break, yeah, to play the lovely, lovely little game called Neva that we're gonna talk
Mhm.
about today, you and me. Um, should we talk about it? Should we talk about
Let's
Neva?
talk about it.
Are you emotionally prepared to talk about Neva?
No.
So Neva's an adventure platforming game with action and puzzle elements. It comes from Barcelona-based developer Nomada Studio. These are the folks who made Gris in 2018, if that's a game that you played. And Gris was actually their first game. Neva's their second. And Gris was like a puzzle platforming game. It didn't have any combat or action elements in it.
Mm. Oh, no.
Oh, I muted myself. That's cool. What was the last thing you heard?
It didn't have any combat in Greece.
Cool, yeah. No, I accidentally bumped my microphone and just
Okay,
muted myself. I was just like, "You're
great.
done." Cool. So yeah, so Greece didn't have any combat, but it was like a really beautiful little puzzle platformer that, was
Mm,
exploring themes of grief and how one processes grief and goes through that. And so kind of in a similar vein, Neva is kind of takes, the basics of Greece and evolves on those. You still have the puzzle platforming elements, but they have added combat and more exploration to the game design. And the story centers on this like basically almost completely wordless tale of a young woman and her companion spirit wolf who's named Neva as they grow and journey together in a world that's plagued by a dark entity and the monsters that serve her. And I would say like the developers describe it as a dying world. This
mhm,
like dark entity and the monsters kind of represent death and rot. Um, and so Neva and her human companion are fighting back against those forces. The game released earlier this month to very positive reviews on Steam and holds an 87 on OpenCritic. And it's available on essentially all platforms. You can get it on Steam, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox. It's a pretty short game. I think I fully beat it. The PlayStation clock is a little bit I'm not sure I fully
fine.
trust it. It's saying 8 hours now, but that's with my platinum. I got
Mhm,
the platinum in the game. I'm thinking I probably finished the game closer to 4 or 5 hours.
yeah,
But I did play on PlayStation. Spencer, what have you played it on? How long did it take? And what's your
mhm.
kind of high level TLDR on Neva?
Yeah, rare, but I played it on PS5 as well.
Look at you.
I know,
And you
crazy.
didn't even have the
It's funny
PlayStation
'cause I, like,
Portal. You played a game on a TV?
I know, I know, with the controller, it's like, "Who am I?"
Get out of here.
Um,
Where's my friend Spencer?
yeah, I know.
Imposter.
Yeah. I unhingedly, I downloaded it on the Switch,
Oh
and
god.
then I was like, I wanna play it on the TV," so I downloaded it on the
Why
PS5
Switch
as
and
well,
not the
so,
Steam Deck?
um you're welcome, Nomada. I think because okay, this is crazy, but sometimes the Steam Deck is, like, so heavy in my
Mm,
hands, and I was recently
yeah.
using my Switch to play Echoes of Wisdom,
Mhm.
and I was like, "This is nice, it's so lightweight."
Reminded of how light it
So
is. Yeah. No, that's
yeah.
valid.
So, but yeah, I played it on console. Similarly, about 4 or 5 hours. My PlayStation is still saying I've only played it for 1 hour, which is just not true.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna estimate, like, the 4 or 5 range. And honestly, you know what it reminded me of was, Samurai Jack, if people remember that cartoon.
Mhm.
Did you ever watch that?
I mean,
Um,
I've seen clips. I didn't, like, watch it when it was on. I've heard it's good.
just this story of a lone swords person up against these insurmountable entity of darkness.
Mm,
It just
mhm.
kind of reminded me of that. Sorry, quick cough break. And I mean, I loved it. I think we'll get into the why, but I thought it was perfectly paced, highly emotional, beautiful art and music. And Jamie, I didn't play Grease, but you did. I was
Mhm.
curious, Grease is still a game that I've heard you mention as, like, an example of a game that really affected you. I'm curious, like, I know it's been several years since you played it, but kind of when you think of Grease, like, what's that kind of lasting emotional impression that it left behind?
Yeah, so I'd probably categorize Grease as, like, a game that I really enjoyed my time with, but I don't think it did have, like, staying power. Um,
Oh, interesting, okay.
Grease has a there's a you can find a lot of, like, really positive reviews about Grease, like, people really, really loving and resonating with Grease. I played it kind of after that hype cycle had passed and found it to be, like, not as impactful for me, like, it definitely still hit, but I
Mm,
felt a real disconnect between the puzzle platforming that I was doing and the, like, broader themes of the game. And so I liked
Mm.
it, but it was kind of like okay, this is the first outing from the studio. I'm gonna be really interested to see what they do next. And so for me,
Mm.
I think Neva hits a lot harder for me, and I think, comes much closer to tying together the themes and the gameplay. I still we can kinda get into this, but if I have any complaints about Neva at all, it is that there's still a little bit of a, like I I don't always know if, like, what I'm doing in the game makes 100% sense to me, like and sometimes it just
Mm.
feels like,
Mm.
"This is the gameplay. You're gonna do this gameplay now," rather than it feeling, like,
Yeah.
fully a part of the story that they're telling, and I think that that
Mm.
divide that you're nodding along, so I'm guessing you've sensed some of this in Neva. I think that divide was even more pronounced in
Mm.
Greece. It was very like, "Oh, I'm gonna
Mm.
go do this, like, puzzle platforming this, like, platforming puzzle, and then there's gonna be, like, a cutscene." But I really
Yeah,
appreciated the
yeah.
art of the game, the music of the game, just the overall, like, they're very the Nomada Studio is, like, really good at giving you an emotion. Like, you
Mm.
feel the emotions that they want you to feel. I think they nail that aspect of it, um,
Oh, yeah.
100%. And so I think
Oh,
Grease is
yeah.
a great example of that. I would still totally recommend people go play Grease, but, it didn't, yeah, I didn't walk away from it being like, "Wow, this is the best game I played this year." I was like, "Well, that was a really emotional experience that didn't fully land for me in all the areas." If that makes
Word,
sense.
word. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Um,
let's
I mean, this is a
go ahead. I think we're getting
oh.
some internet delay. Go ahead and finish your thought, sorry.
Fun. I was gonna say, like, this is a pretty short game, like, should we just say at the beginning, like, spoilers may follow in
I
this
think I
convo,
definitely
or do
would
we
like
wanna
to
keep it
yeah, I think I'd like to talk spoilers at some point, but I think we can probably talk
Mhm.
broadly about our thoughts and feelings and then maybe go into
Okay,
spoilers in a little bit. Does that sound okay?
sounds good. Yeah.
Because it is such a short experience, I hope that people will hear what we have to say about it and be inspired to go play it and not spoil the game for themselves.
True.
Because I do think, yeah, I mean, obviously we're gonna have to talk about the game to talk about the game, but I don't want to spoil like the big, like emotional beats, uh, if we
For
can
sure.
avoid it. Um, so yeah, let's get into it a bit. I want to talk about the gameplay first. It's a side-scrolling game, 2D animation, and yet they create a lot of depth in the image. That was one of the things that
Oh,
stood out to
yeah.
me right away. It reminded me a
Mhm.
bit of like I used to watch. I've seen like old documentary kind of behind the scenes footage of the making of like Bambi. Maybe a weird pull, but
Mhm.
if you've ever seen the like Disney animated film Bambi from like 1920 or whatever the fuck, one of the things
Heard
that
of
was
it.
really special about Bambi was that they created depth in a two-dimensional image by painting scenes onto panes of glass and stacking the glass,
Whoa.
in, like, a holder, and then filming it through so it created this so Bambi would be on one layer, but then you had all these different layers of woods, and then they shoot through that, and it creates this sense that there's all this depth in the woods even though the final image is
Hmm.
two-dimensional. And there was something about the way that
Whoa.
they put action and scenery on these different like, there were clear, like, planes, like, layers within the image. And
Yeah.
the way they stacked the image on top of itself like that, it reminded me of Bambi, but it also just has like it's a really cool style that makes you feel like even though the image is 2D, there's still elements that are happening in front of your character as you're moving across the screen left to right. And so there'll be times where you don't see your character because you're going behind a tree that's in the foreground.
Mm.
And so it still creates this depth, and it also gives them just the space to do lots of things like, um, they would place enemy characters in the foreground or the background elements, like ones that you're not even gonna fight and come up
Mhm.
against, but it just creates this
Mm.
constant feeling like the enemies are all around you. The sceneries like you're always surrounded by nature, by the enemies, whatever it
Yes.
is. I thought that was a really cool effect for what's otherwise like, yeah, flat 2D side scrolling. You're not moving deeper into the image at all, but it still creates a lot of depth.
Mhm.
What stood out to you about
Mhm.
the gameplay?
Yeah, I mean, that really resonates. I think for me, it was the immediate sort of connection between the 2 characters of, Alba, who is you're this protagonist, you wield a sword and you're, you know, jumping, dodging, and then you're in companionship with Neva, who grows from a tiny puppy, to this adult wolf who dwarfs you,
Mhm.
and goes from being scared and timid to, like, being the stronger of the 2 of you, and, right away, core to the gameplay in addition to the platforming is, especially when she's a puppy, like, petting Neva, calling her to make sure she's following you,
Mhm.
um, helping her if she can't make a jump, and then eventually, like, commanding her to like, pointing her at enemies to fight, or even fighting alongside of you, and just that within the first, like, 5 minutes of the game,
Mhm.
when I would call her and then you could pet her, I was like, "Oh, no. Oh, no.
I'm toast. They got me.
I'm cooked."
Yeah, they got my whole heart in the palm of their hands. Yeah, they do that very
Mhm.
expertly, and it's I don't know, it's perhaps a little manipulative, but they definitely
Mhm.
play on the heartstrings of any animal lover and very quickly and Neva feels like a real, creature, like, they do a lot with the sound design, the little noises that she makes, the little
Yeah.
barks and yips and cries when she cries. There's a part of the game where she keeps, like, grabbing dead bodies of the enemies and just, like, shaking them, like, "Ah," just like and you
Yeah.
you have to, like, be like, "Neva," and, like, you click your tongue at her and get her to stop doing it.
Mhm.
That all just, like, felt yeah, as somebody who's a dog owner, it, like, really resonated, and it does, you're right, it completely and very immediately ties you to her, and you feel like yeah, you it completely builds a relationship between you and her as a character.
Totally.
Um, what'd you
I
think of
think
the Oh, go ahead,
too
sorry.
yeah, just what you were talking about the depth of the scenery and the way that, the way it surrounds you, it made me think about something else that stood out to me was just how there was no super obvious wayfinding in this game. I think
Mhm.
it expects you to traverse left to right and in terms of how you would expect a side-scrolling platformer to progress. But there are lots of little hidden pathways in the game or little areas that you can discover. And I just felt like the way that those paths unfolded, it wasn't like the classic yellow paint on the wall to indicate where you're supposed to go. Like, it's so subtle that you feel like you're truly stumbling across a secret, and I just thought it was amazing the way that the artwork sort of everything was placed intentionally, so anything I discovered, they were hoping I would, but I felt like I was uncovering something, like, it felt like any natural inclination I'd have to try to test a pathway, it would work out in a way that felt amazing to me. And it just rewarded any sort of exploration, or even if I turned my back, like if I was like, I'm not going to go left to right, I'm going to try to go to the opposite direction,
Mhm.
that would pretty much always pay off.
Mhm.
And so I really appreciated that about the game. It wasn't doing anything in a super overt way. Um, so I love games that make me feel smart.
Yeah, me too, me too. What'd you think of the combat in the game? Personally, I found it, like, just the right amount of challenging. I played it the game has 2 difficulty modes. It has, like, an adventure I'm gonna mess up the name of them, but it has one mode that's, like, considered the quote, unquote, "standard way to play" that the developers designed for,
Mhm.
and I wanna say that's called, like, adventure mode or something like that,
It
and then it
is.
okay. And then it has a is it story mode? Is the other one just story mode?
Mhm.
Something yeah, okay. And
Yeah.
that in story mode, there's no death, like, you don't even take damage, and challenges are like, the combat challenges are easier. The enemies require less hits, and like, fewer
Mhm.
of them spawn, I think. Um So I kind of found I played the game on adventure mode. Oh, yeah, you put it right in our doc adventure mode story mode. Spencer's one step ahead of me, and I'm just not even receiving their help, just going it alone.
You stumbled right into the correct answer.
Stumbled right into the correct answer. Anyway, I played the game on adventure mode. I felt like the challenge was well balanced for me personally. It never did like I definitely died plenty of times, but the game's like super generous with how it respawns you right back in, usually on that same screen, like right at that same fight.
Mhm.
So you're not having to traipse back. Like it understands that the point of the game is not to have a challenging combat to experience, and the combat, I think, is I mean, it's there as part of the story, but it also just gives a little friction in the experience, if you want that. And
Mhm.
so I enjoyed kind of mastering the combat, but never felt like it was holding me back or causing anything. It wasn't like harming the story that they were trying to tell in any way. So I appreciated it, and thought it was like pretty well done. It wasn't too complex. Uh, Mostly just hack and slash, with like jumping and timing jumps. But yeah. Why are we laughing?
Well, that's great for you. I'm over here in story mode where I belong.
I'm just like watching you like chuckle harder and harder as I'm like talking. I'm like, what's the matter? Like, what am I saying that's weird right
You're
now?
like, "It's not that complex," you know,
I
like,
mean, I
I felt
did
like it was just the
die,
right
but
amount of challenge.
okay, well, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to like anyway,
No, no, no,
tell
don't
me
be.
how was the view from story mode?
Um, yeah,
I
over
think
here
that's a
in the
valid
story mode
perspective.
camp.
No, no, like, it's not like over here. It's a completely valid way to play the game. They give you 2 options right from the home screen, and you pick which one you want. I picked adventure mode. I'm describing my experience with adventure mode. What was your experience with story mode, Spencer? In that super
2
valid way to
paths
play the game.
diverged in a wood, and we picked 2. Yeah, the game, the way it's set up with the health bar, it's like you have 3 strikes,
Mhm.
essentially. It showed, like 3 flowers in the bottom of the screen, and, you get hit 3 times, you perish, and then you can regain health, by landing consecutive strings of hits against enemies. Um Something I know about myself is that I'm kind of bad at platforming, and this was a game that requires, especially if you're trying to discover everything that there is to discover, like, in addition to progressing through each level, there are these kinda like these glowing flowers that you can access throughout, as a bit of a bonus collectible, and they often require very tricky combinations of jumps and, if you can double jump, you can dash or sorry, it's more of a dodge, like a dodge/dash, slash dash.
Yeah.
And it was I mean, I really liked I actually really enjoyed the platforming, which is rare for me because, there were lots of moments where I was like, "I really don't see how I'm gonna traverse this gap or get to that higher point." And through the right timing and application of the jumping and dashing, like, I would sort of amaze myself of like, "Oh, wow, I figured that out." But at the same time, like, that was its own challenge, then plus adding in the combat where I was dying so much, like, I'm just not someone who does very well with kind of combat in general, I guess. Like, I like turn-based stuff, but I think too the fact that not only was the puzzle in sort of jumping and dashing to reach, various levels or traverse throughout the stage, but, like, there was also a bit of that puzzling and timing involved in the combat, and so, like, I was just getting very frustrated, and I was dying a lot, and I was
Mhm.
like, "You know what? The point of this game, like you said, isn't for this to be, like, a cutting edge, like, combat Dark
Yeah.
Souls-like experience." Like,
Yeah.
the combat is there to sort of color in and add context to this story of a desperate race against time to save a dying world. I think there's still a lot for me to get out of just the platforming and plenty of challenge there without me getting frustrated and getting taken out of the story by having to do these combat scenarios over and over again. So
Mhm.
I switched to story mode, didn't look back. And if anything, I felt like the removal of the health bar from the bottom of the page just helped me immerse further in the beauty of the artwork and
That's
the
awesome.
immersion of the landscape. So, um, yeah, I it was one of those times where I sometimes feel a little tinge of guilt when I turn on easy mode or whatever, but I didn't. I felt like I had a great time.
That's good, that's good. And I think, like, I don't know, like, there's still a challenge in the combat even if you place it on easy, it's just that the challenge is no longer
Yeah.
that you're going to die. The challenge is and this isn't the case for all enemies, there's plenty of enemies that you just run up to and you hack at, and that's it for them. But especially as the game moves on into the later chapters, there's way more puzzle involved in the combat and even, like, platforming involved. Like, there'll be enemies that are kind of holding these big blocks, and you have to jump over the block to get on the other side of them to attack them. Like, they introduce those guys first, and then there'll be an enemy that's holding the block, and you actually need to time it so that when he lifts the block, you jump on the block and use that to get up to a different platform where there's a
Mm,
different enemy that you need to kill first. Like, things like that, start to get introduced. So yeah, I don't know. The fact that the enemies can kill you is just like one small piece of that challenge, and it's not like bumping it down to story mode makes the game like removes all challenge or makes the game frictionless. Yeah. So I'm
mhm.
glad to hear that you were guilt free about your adjustment to easy mode
Thank
because
you.
nobody should ever feel guilty for something like that. Uh, Says me, who
Yeah.
totally struggles with that as well. It's way easier for me to tell you not to feel guilty than it is to, do that for myself, so. Um,
Yeah,
let's talk a bit about the art because the art in this game is fucking gorgeous.
yeah.
So, we talked about it a little bit with, like, the depth of field, but just generally, the look of the game, I it's I've seen it described as watercolors.
Mm,
It's not quite true because I think it's not, like, translucent like watercolor would be.
right.
But it's definitely playing in, like, these really soft colors and, like, soft edges to things. There aren't, like it's not
Mhm,
using, like, the bold black outline, like, comic book style that so many independent games use. It's, really seamless, super colorful. These your character is fairly small in a much bigger world and space usually in scenes.
mm,
Uh, and I've kind of felt like I could pause the game at any moment and be presented with, like, a beautiful screenshot, like a piece of art. Like, at
yeah,
any moment in this game, you could hit pause, and it's just gorgeous what's in front of you. You could print it out and hang it
yeah,
on your wall. There were certain
mhm,
moments in the game where you're, like, running through a field, and there's giant boar and crane and deer and mountains in the background, and it's just and the music is swelling, and it's just so
yeah,
fucking pretty that it hurts. Um,
mhm,
Definitely some inspiration from Studio Ghibli films, and in particular, I felt a lot of Princess Mononoke vibes in terms of
mm,
the presentation of
mhm,
the animals. I mean, for one thing, you have a giant wolf, which, you have in Princess Mononoke, but they also have very large boar and deer that are, like, just way bigger than the main character, Alba. Um,
yeah.
so I definitely felt that inspiration there. You're nodding along a lot. Are
Yeah.
there other things you wanted to hit with the art that really stood out to you or impressed you?
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about the watercolor thing. I totally agree with your take on it. It almost at times felt like layered. I think too when you were speaking about the Bambi process,
Yes, the Bambi process.
the Bambi process, like these layer it almost felt like uh,
Mm,
paper art where you cut out layers
yeah.
of paper and lay them on top of each other to create these scenes.
Mhm.
Like it had this very soft and ethereal vibe. I think too the sense of scale was something that stood out to me as well. Even just there are many scenes where you're traversing up an impossible distance and down an impossible distance and or you're climbing and climbing and the camera keeps zooming out further and further and you just get this immense sense of space. Also, the game I think feels very dreamlike at times. Like there are moments where you're falling at a rate and distance where you're like, no one could survive
Yeah, then
this,
you just
and you
casually land
do,
on your
or
feet.
yeah, like it gets hard to differentiate between like reality and dream, or you're in these spaces where like trees are breaking apart and floating, or like you're running across the surface of water, or your reflection. I actually love this level where it's like mirrored, to the point where like you're seeing your reflection in water, and in that reflection you can see platforms. And if
Mm.
you're jumping on the top level, it's like you're landing on these invisible platforms that you can only see in your reflected image, and just things like that, that just constantly playing um, with space and how to and navigation in a way that made every level feel very fresh. I think, like, speaking of visuals, I'd love to talk about the enemy design a bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you mentioned Princess Mononoke, totally get that vibe, like, with even just, like, the encroaching, like, it's like this inky black substance that's overtaking everything. Um, I wanted to read an excerpt from this review that I read on Slant Magazine. It's by Mitchell Demarest. There's aspects of this piece that I want to discuss. So I'm going to save the title of the piece for a little bit later. But this one quote from Mitchell's piece about the enemies says, the enemies you sometimes fight and other times just observe are a highlight of the game's visual design. They're distinctly human like, with long, grasping limbs and masked faces that stare blankly atop inky black bodies. Their movement and behavior suggest the worst elements of human nature: greed, compulsion, self destruction, and they take many forms as the game progresses. They corrupt animals, small and large. They combine into writhing, indistinct masses, and they liquefy when they die, if they were even alive to begin with. I think what stood out to me from that excerpt was the way they talk about how their movement and behavior suggest the worst elements of human nature: greed, compulsion, and self destruction. I absolutely got that from the
Mhm.
design. Like, it just felt like the worst impulses, the most depraved, like the hunger, the th I don't even know if it's evil or just the most
Mhm.
base urges that
Yeah.
that we as humans have. I think if we think about, I certainly feel like a theme of this is like, climate change and destruction of the earth, and it's like, as humans, it's almost like we can't help ourselves. Like, we're just consuming mindlessly, everything
Mhm.
around us, and I felt like I really felt that from the enemy design, and I yeah. What did you think?
No, I agree with all that. I really like, Mitchell got in their bag a bit there with that description of the enemies, but I like
I know,
that.
right? They ate.
Yeah, I like that description a lot, and yeah, the animation style of the game, like, the way movement is animated, especially with the enemies, has this almost, it's not stop
Mm,
motion, but it's like there's, like, not enough frames or something like that. It gives things kind of, it can have this, like,
mm,
herky-jerky feel to it, and at the same time, the enemies
mhm,
can be very fluid. The way they would possess, an animal, and that you can't really fight them while they're inside of an animal possessed, so you just have to kinda
mm,
stay, at one point, there's a scene where they possess a boar, and the boar keeps charging at you, and you just have to, like, dodge the attacks and wait, and eventually the boar will, like, this dead boar that they've reanimated gets exhausted and just, like, flops onto the ground, and the enemies, like, just a horde of them comes, like, popping out of its mouth, just, like, screaming and writhing. Like, they're almost
mhm. Like a
demonic in that
parasite.
sense t yeah, like a parasite, but also, like, it just reminds me of, like, old paintings of demons just, like, all clawing their way up
Yeah.
together in mass and writhing, and you go over and you smack at them, and you'll kill some of them, but there'll be enough that they can pick the boar back up and, like, run it around again until you've killed all the ones out of there.
Mhm,
And then, leaning into that theme of climate change, and fighting back against it and kind of, like, renewing the planet and circle of life, after you you defeat the reanimated creatures, uh, you and Neva can go stand by their body, and you can hold down your, like, interact button for Neva, and she'll kind of do a howl, and you'll, I think, like, hum kind of a thing. You, like, kinda, like, sing almost like you're doing a little tribute
Mhm.
to the spirit of the animal, and the corpse will just, like, come to life with plant life, like flowers and grass and stuff will grow
Mhm.
up from the body. There's actually, like, a trophy for attending to all of the reanimated corpses in a level that you encounter
Aw.
like that. If you go to each one and do that little ceremony, you'll get an achievement for it. Um, so yeah, I don't know. The enemy design was very cool, and despite the game having like no dialogue in it at all, like all of those themes and everything, I felt like they were trying to communicate with that enemy, really came through strongly.
Mhm.
And then as you work your way up from the minions to fighting the like kind of final boss enemy, and I don't want to get too much into that, but the representation that they have of, like, the leader of these entities was really
Mhm.
cool too, and, I don't know how they escalate that and expand upon it. Really interesting.
Yeah. And even the way they sort of build some lore in the world of
Mhm.
where these things come from and what drives them, like, there's some like, it's not by any means what I would consider to be a horror game,
No.
but there are scenes where you're sort of, um, seeing like there's a sequence where you're kind of going deep into this sort of nightmarish world, populated by the bodies of these creatures that are coming from this darkness. And it's like the deeper you go, it's like even the very walls and ground you walk on are just built from their bodies. And you're seeing like them trapped in walls and kind of reaching and grasping for whatever they can get. And it is
Mhm.
almost like this like you see them like worshipers like feeding this dark entity. um
Mhm.
it's all like very gripping and chilling.
Mhm.
And it's not there's no jump scares in this. It's not again, it's not like a horror setting, but
Mhm.
I was just so arrested by the overwhelming visual um of these creatures and the kind of the hopelessness and the total antithesis of the sort of natural world filled with light and animals to this very claustrophobic, hellish, like, overwhelming, um, space of being trapped among these monstrous bodies. Like, it was just like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. Let's dig into some of those themes then that the game touches on, right? So again, like there's
Sure.
really no dialogue to speak of in the game outside of calling Neva's name. Like that's literally I think the only spoken word that exists in the game.
Yeah.
Um and yet I think thematically we've talked about climate change. I think one of the other themes that really came through strongly for me is like there's definitely a reading of this where it's yes, the monsters, the black faceless entities could be seen as a metaphor for climate change, but I think they can also be a stand-in for death. Um for like
Mhm.
anything that ends. And so there's definitely I think
Mm.
themes in here too about fear of death, fighting back against death,
Mm.
or like not be like it yeah, like not wanting something to die or not being able to process the idea that something will die. So like someone close to you will
Yeah.
die. And trying to fight against that or being afraid that someone near you might die. And then parenting, I think, is another huge theme, both in terms of like you can extrapolate that out to like what it would mean to, to parent a kid and what that looks like and how they grow and they eventually leave
Mhm.
you behind. I think a lot of that is mirrored in the relationship that Alba has with Neva. But also, as a person who has dogs, like I see a lot of that in
Yeah.
here too, like just what it means to have animals in your life, to watch them grow, to train them, and to, yeah, eventually watch them die and move on. Um, I think
Mhm.
this is a game from day 1 when the trailer started playing, people were like, "Oh, fuck, that wolf's gonna die, like, that dog's gonna they're gonna
Yeah.
kill this dog." These are the folks who made a game all about grief and death. And so,
Mhm.
it's, I'll say I don't think it's a spoiler to say because literally in the very first scene of the game, you watch uh a wolf die. Like you watch Alba's pet at the beginning of the game
Mhm.
die. Um, and then she raises a puppy from there. So it's yeah,
Mhm.
death and the cycle of life is a very big theme in the game, for sure. What kind
Yeah,
of stuck with you and
absolutely.
stood out to you? And then I don't know if we need to go into spoilers, we'll just do that at some point here soon because I think there's stuff to say maybe more deeply about these themes if
Mhm.
we want to get into spoilers.
Sure. Yeah, so that review I was mentioning from Mitchell Demarest, the title of the piece is "Parenting at the End of the World." And Mitchell writes, "The game bittersweetly fixates on parenthood as you watch Neva herself grow and outpace Alba as the seasons pass, and on the destruction of the natural world, which in turn makes it more hostile and violent. And then there's the connective thread between the two, that even when it feels like everything is falling apart, because sometimes it literally is, the only thing you can do is keep moving." Um, End quote. I think, yeah, like, there's something it's like, as soon as I mean, I'm not a parent, but I have heard parents say that it's like, as soon as you have a child, you're sort of knowing deep inside that there's gonna come a day where you're gonna need to let them go out into the world to figure things out and not, you know, consider them as an extension of yourself or under your wing anymore. Um and I thought the game did a really beautiful job of kind of bringing us through that kind of, transition of watching Alba, or sorry, not Alba, Neva grow from this, like, helpless puppy to this strong, beautiful, powerful, like,
Independent woman.
antlered wolf. Yeah. Um and, like, it just yeah, I don't know. Should we I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm having trouble talking without spoilers."
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, is there do you wanna put a pin in that thought and then we can transition to spoilers, or do you feel like we could just go now? I just wanna give you an opportunity to finish your sentence.
Themes. I mean, yeah, so I think yes, I totally agree with the sort of, read on kind of the cyclical nature of, the human condition and kind of the cycle of life and nature and everything sort of returning. Um, Time is a flat circle type stuff.
Mhm.
But too, like, my partner was watching me play and commented, like, "Oh, this makes me think of climate change and how, like, the people, like activists who are out there working to, like, conservationists, scientists, activists, it's like they no matter what they do, it just feels like things can be set in motion, and it's like the work is never finished." It's like, you know,
Mhm.
people will make progress in certain areas, um, or they'll affect change in however way they can, but there will always be more work to be carried on, and that work is never done. And even, you know, like we can argue about what causes climate change and who is responsible for it. I'm in no way saying that humans are not responsible for climate change. Um, but two, it's like, you know, at this point, it's like no matter what we do, there is gonna be catastrophic effects, into the future because of climate change, and so it sometimes can feel like what we're doing is futile, but it's also like, it's not our responsibility. Like, it's going to be impossible for us to fully solve climate change, like us as individuals. And at the same time, that does not mean that we're absolved of the responsibility to do whatever we can within our power to sort of stave it off. And so I do feel like throughout this game, there were moments where, the flood of darkness and monsters coming towards you is overwhelming and impossible, and it's inevitable that we're eventually going to succumb. And yet we keep going and keep pushing and keep fighting. Um, and that just feels very much like being alive in the real world.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, and
all
and
that
I
hit.
think Yeah, well, I mean, all that hits on that level, but I think what, I don't know, something I really appreciate about the game is I think it keeps things open-ended enough that you do get out of it what you wanna like, you can take a lot of different messages from it. I mean, not, like, just any
Mhm.
message, but, like, it's open to interpretation and also open to what you bring to it as a piece of art and, like, what you wanna get back out of it. And so I think, you were having these really strong emotions around the climate change piece, which was definitely something I picked up on, but I guess, just yeah, someone who has an aging dog right now. I've got a
Mhm.
ten-year-old Basset Hound mix. She's the first dog me and my partner have ever had. And it was like I kept kind of coming back to this and reading it as a piece about like, yeah, just how scary it is to watch an animal, like, get older and to fear for them and to not
Yeah.
want them to die and to feel like, you're just constantly in a situation of trying to prevent them from like, you have this thing that
Mhm.
you, like, are responsible for in the world, and you wanna take care of it and
Yeah.
protect it and keep it safe, but you know that, like, eventually that is like, you won't be able to. You're not gonna be able to totally protect it from everything, and eventually something will come for it and snuff out its life, and
Yeah.
it's kind of futile to fight against that, but that there's, like, something that there can be happiness on the other side of that, and beauty in the experience of going through that with an animal. So that
Mhm.
was what I was really, like, sitting with playing the game. And I think those are both it, like, tees
Yeah.
itself up to give both of those reads, like, those are super valid. I think if somebody was a parent of a human child, I think they would walk away with probably a lot more feelings in that vein too. So it kind of can hit on
Mhm.
all of those levels. Do you wanna go into some
Yeah.
spoilers now?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So, if you haven't played the game, uh maybe turn the episode off for tonight. I think our TLDR
Goodbye.
on Neva is that we like it a lot and you should play it. But yeah, we'll go into these and I'll tag in the comments after, and when we release the episode publicly, we'll put the timestamps and stuff in the comments and in the
Mhm.
episode description. But spoilers ahead. You've been warned. Spencer, are the devs just manipulative assholes for playing with our heart and killing
When
Neva not once, but twice in this game.
Yeah. I said hi to Jamie earlier, and I was like, "First of all, fuck this game for making me watch my dog die twice."
Yeah. So I referenced before we got into spoilers that the game opens with a scene of Alba is walking through this like beautiful field with Neva and a young puppy. Neva's a full adult wolf. And you watch in just those
Mhm.
opening moments of the game as the dark entity arrives and Alba fights valiantly against it, but fails, gets knocked down,
Mhm.
and we see it, swarming Neva, and then cut to black. Alba wakes up later. It's like dusk now, evening has started to fall, and finds Neva's body dead with some beautiful, it's like there's like a tree sprung up next to it, and there's Neva dead. And the little puppy is like crying, and Alba picks the puppy up and holds it and then the
Mhm.
game begins, and you're raising the puppy, and you think that that's the puppy that you just picked up, and that you've seen the worst, that the worst is behind you, that you saw the wolf
Yeah,
die,
it's all up from here.
that you saw it die, and that's it. And then you play through the whole game. The game takes place in seasons, so it starts with summer, and
Mhm.
you have the little puppy, and then we go to fall and to winter, and you watch the Neva grow, and then you get to
Mhm.
the spring, and then
You
suddenly a scene
bond.
starts, you bond deeply. You watch Neva
You pin
find
all your
love.
hopes on her.
You put all your
Yeah.
hopes on her. You hope that she'll pursue all of your career dreams that you did
Yeah.
anyway. Um, you, you get to spring, to the ending of the game, and a scene starts to play out that looks really fucking familiar to the opening scene, and lo and behold, it is exactly the opening scene because the game went back in time, and you're now
Mhm.
watching that opening fight again, except now this time you're super fucking attached because you raised that goddamn wolf from a puppy, and now you have to watch it
This
die
time you're
again.
screaming and sobbing as it goes
Yeah,
down.
screaming, choking, sobbing, throwing up. Um, yeah, and it definitely it's manipulative, I think, but
Mhm.
I also do think I think it works. I think it lends to the cyclical nature of the piece. I do think it's a little bit of a gotcha, but I don't hate them for it. Because I definitely thought
Mhm.
that I was safe. I thought, like, see the trailer, I'm like, okay, this wolf on the cover is gonna die. And then the wolf dies in the first
Mhm.
5 minutes. You're like, okay, great. Well, I'm glad we got that behind us. I didn't really know that wolf, so it's still sad to watch the wolf die, but that's okay. Now me and
Yeah.
my new wolf, we're gonna live forever. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope, no, you're not.
Yeah.
But I think that really speaks to the themes of the piece, the cyclical
Mhm.
nature of whether that's the fight against climate change, whether it's the circle of life. I'm gonna keep
Mhm.
referencing Disney movies, or whether it's like the fact that you can't stop death, you can't fight back against that. But what we do see in
Yeah.
that final scene that we don't see in the opening scene is that we actually get to see how Neva fights back against the darkness, the entity, and how she actually seems to succeed in destroying it by spawning new life,
Mhm.
by bursting into like turning it into plants, I think into like the grass and the tree and stuff that's near her
Yeah,
where
it's
she lays
into the
dead.
tree that's next to her body, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then, after you grieve her for a little bit, she turns into a bunch of butterflies, right?
Mhm.
Like her body just like and she's just a bunch of butterflies. So it's all like very
Yeah.
clearly symbolic of um yeah, that circle of life. The fact that like one thing dies so another can a new life is reborn within it. And also the fact that you still have the puppy at the end, I think definitely lends to a reading of like, they always say when you lose a pet that you should get another, that can really help with the grief and how that's like
Mhm.
I don't know, it's just a way to process that and to put that nurturing and that love into a new creature while still holding on to the memory of the
Mhm.
one that you lost, and yeah, I don't know, I think all of that really worked for me.
Yeah.
Definitely sad. I didn't realize I was crying, and then my partner was like, "You've got a tear." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Aw.
But yeah, how did that work
Yeah.
for you? What spoilers did you wanna dig into? Was it just the ending, or was there other stuff?
I mean, that's kind of the main spoiler,
Yeah.
but no, I do think hearing you talk about the parallel with, sort of being a pet owner or someone who loves animals, that definitely resonates and kind of changes my perception of the ending, um, because I think sort of very similar to what you said, I think it's like, you're watching the accelerated aging of this creature that lives with you. Like, it's, like, accelerated in the sense that their lives are so much shorter than ours,
Mhm.
and I think, like, the length of Neva, the game, kind of feels a bit like a bit of that too. You're watching this animal grow up very quickly in front of your eyes,
Mhm.
and still, no matter how beautiful and strong and playful and present they are, there will come a day where that slows down and where they'll be taken away from you, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. And so I
Mhm.
do feel like the way that the game sort of lulls you into this sense of security, like you said, like, "Oh, we're gonna live forever." Um, and it's like at any moment, that can and will be snatched away from you. I mean, it's like one of the most devastating things ever. It's like such a tragedy how animals are so pure and full of love and, just so joyful, and it's like because of that, they are given the gift of not having to suffer on this mortal plane for very long.
Yeah.
Um, and so, similarly, I've had an animal in my life, for almost 13 years now, and, um, she, like, holds my entire heart in her tiny body, and there are days where I look at her and it's like I can't do anything except stare at her and take her in because I can't imagine the day where I look down and she's not there, but I know it's gonna happen. But does that mean that I'm just gonna succumb to despair? I mean, maybe, but also no, because, like, my partner always reminds me, like, I'll be like, "Oh my god, like, she's getting older, I see these gray hairs, like, oh my god, like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do?" And he's like, "Okay, but she look at her, she's purring, she's rolling around, she's playing, like, she's here now, like,
Yeah.
be here with her." Um, and so I guess now we're just talking about how much we love our pets, but, like, I do feel like the game really captures that kind of beautiful tragedy of loving something, knowing that, um, like, you're always gonna outlive them, and still enjoying the journey of sharing all of the beauty of life together. And I actually really like your read about how this is a meditation on death and loss, because like yes, the monsters in this game were scary, but I don't know, like, were they evil? Like, yes, like
Yeah.
the very first indicator that we see of this darkness is like a bird is flying in the sky and it suddenly seizes and dies and falls to the ground and black flowers grow from its body. Like all that this entity can be accused of is consuming the world around it. But everything dies, everything comes to an end, and so it's like if we're to say that this entity is evil, then we're saying death is evil. We're saying rot is evil. Like very natural
Mhm.
progressions of the world are evil. And it's like, is it evil or is it just scary to us? Because as mortal beings that can live and think, what else is scarier than the idea of ceasing to exist?
Yeah.
Like I think, yeah, I really enjoy that read as well.
Well, and I think, part of what pushes me towards that read is that, um, you spend the whole game, you're on this constant journey with Neva, working your way deeper and deeper into, like, the heart of the darkness, the heart of the dark areas to when you get to those final chapters and, you're in you were describing them earlier, the, like, tunnels where the pillars and stuff are all made out of the bodies of these creatures, and you work your way up to, like, basically the throne of, like, the queen of death, I guess would be the way I would categorize her, but,
Hmm.
um, this very large, monstrous figure that has a sword like Alba does, which is, like, really like a reflection of
Hmm.
Alba in some ways. I felt like
Yeah.
the way they designed her, she was like a larger version of Alba who obviously had the, like, no face design of, like, being all black with, like, the white painted face, but you defeat her in the game, like,
Hmm.
you fight her, Neva shows up at the last minute and helps out, like, you conquer
Mhm.
her, and then you get the beautiful spring scene with Neva and her cub, and you're walking through the beautiful woods, and then all of a sudden, that bird falls from the sky and dies, and and the blackness and all the monsters just, like, sweeps the land again, and
Mhm.
ends up killing Neva, and Neva kills it or, like, turns it into a tree, right? And so to me that, like it sounds kinda silly to describe it. It's very beautiful in practice. Um, but, like, that
Mhm.
to me read like, you can't defeat death. Like, you can't
Right,
you can postpone it through different things, but, like, it's still
right.
it's inevitable. Like, to in that
Mhm.
sense, the darkness, that entity is inevitable. It will come for you. You might be able to stave it off, or maybe that you can only defeat it through the creation of new life, but that doesn't mean
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like, you're not defeating
Yeah,
it, like, it will always come for you. So, that inevitability of it was like, pushed me more towards that
yeah.
reading of, like, this is symbolic of death and decay, that and we can't get away from it, but we can new life can spring from that, and that's the beauty on the other
Mm.
side of it.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely.
Do you feel like it's a weakness at all for the game that it is so open to so many different interpretations?
I mean, no, I feel like, for a game with no dialogue, for it to generate this much conversation just through the use of imagery and music and emotion, I think is its strength.
Mhm,
Like, that we can extrapolate so much from it without having any, you know, tactile message. I mean, there's still messages in the game, but like having no dialogue based narrative or for the game to spell out for us what it's trying to say.
mm,
I think like the fact that we can have this much to take from it is great. Like, yeah, I just I like I don't think I think it was I don't think that it was lazy or that it was unfocused in what it was doing.
mhm,
It was just creating a world for people with many different experiences to sort of take something from and feel fulfilled by, even if we didn't all have the same experience. Like, if you're a parent, you can get something from this. If you're someone who loves animals, you can get something from this. If you're someone who cares about nature and the living world, you can take something from this. If you're someone who's experienced grief or loss, you can take something from this. And
mhm,
it just kind of lends a universality to it that I think makes it accessible to lots of different people and lots of different walks of life. Um, so, I think there are games and stories that are successful when they're made for a very specific audience. And in the same way, there are games and stories that are successful when they can be relatable to a bunch of different audiences. Um, and this is one of those times. I think it's hard to do, and I think this game did it well.
mhm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. It's something I've been chewing on because I have heard like some of the more critical takes on the game are that it maybe lacks depth or that it's not
Hmm,
making like it's reflecting a lot of these themes but not saying anything new or interesting about them. Like
hmm,
that it doesn't have a point of view on the topic.
hmm,
Um, and that, like, actually that the amount of reads that you can get from it being so dependent on what you bring to it is, like, a weakness of the game. Specifically, Patrick Klepek from Remap, was he kinda had this take, like, loved the art of the game, loved the
hmm,
music of the game, but feels like it falls short for him in terms of connecting because it's kind of asking him to bring his own depth to it instead of providing that itself.
hmm,
And they were just kind of having a conversation about um, like like someone's an artist, but they're not like they haven't fully like figured it out yet. Like so that the art is like
hmm,
kind of shallow or immature still to a certain extent, and we're kind of using that as a comparison to the game and what it's doing, and he felt like it had Greece had similar issues. And so
hmm,
I don't know, like, I don't know if that's true and that Neva is just connected with me more deeply because of what I brought to it with the pet
hmm.
stuff and all of that. Um, or if that's a I don't know if it's an unfair criticism. But yeah, I guess I've just been wondering like at what I think about that. And I'm still not sure I'm totally
Yeah.
settled on it. But I think that I had a really emotional experience with the game, and I think that's valid. Um, I think it's a
Mhm.
beautiful piece of art, and I do think that broadly, art is so subjective. Like most art is incredibly
Yeah.
subjective, where you get out of it
Mhm.
like what it reflects to you. And so this idea that it needs to like, their intention needs to be something deeper like, I don't know, I think the end user experience with it is valid and that your read can be valid, and it can still be a, like, super worthwhile experience. I don't know if that's a failing on the art itself, if that didn't land for any individual person.
Yeah, I think art is subjective is probably the best way to put it, because it's like
Yeah.
I feel like, if you look at a Rothko painting, not is it worthless because the execution is deceptively simple, and all that you take from it depends on your perspective and what you see within it? Like, does that make it less
Yeah.
meaningful? I don't think so, because art collectors out there are spending millions of dollars on abstract art. I mean, not that money is an indicator of anything's worth, but,
Yeah.
like, I do think people find ways to connect and are still thrilled and awed by art, even if it doesn't have a very specific stance on its surface to
Mhm.
speak of. I guess for me, it's like what keeps jumping out in my mind is I don't know, the enemy design and the way the world all came together. Like, there were moments where I felt my heart rate increase, or I would gasp, or I would just be, like, in awe of like, my partner was watching me play the game, and he was sitting on the couch, like, scrolling on his phone, and the game was so arresting that he put his phone down and was just watching me play for, like, 3 hours, and it's like, that means something to me, that
Mhm.
something can drag someone away from TikTok, like, that's a pretty big deal.
In this day and age, put that on. That's a box quote.
Right.
Better than
Like,
TikTok.
we talk about how media literacy is dying, and I feel like,
Mhm.
if anything, I appreciate games like this for giving lots of fodder. Like, I think, if in general we should all be more comfortable drawing our own conclusions and own reads
Mm.
from content or art, and not depending on someone or something to tell us what we're supposed to take from it, or to spell
Sure.
out for
Yeah.
us what the message is. Like, I
Yeah.
think we should all get more comfortable exercising this muscle of using our own imaginations and lived experiences to make
Mhm.
meaning.
Yeah.
Like, that's
No,
how
that's
I
super valid,
feel.
and I also think that I think it's intentional with this particular game, with this particular piece of art, that they are leaning into that subjectivity, and they want you to create your own interpretation from it. I mean, they very intentionally did
Yeah.
not include dialogue in the game. They very intentionally, that yeah, just everything about the game feels very intentional, including the fact that it's not explicit. Um, so
Yeah.
I really love Neva. This is, I think, definitely gonna be, in that short list for game of the year for me. Um, I think it was such a beautiful emotional experience, like, such a great journey, and even if, a month from now, all that I'm really holding is, like, that experience, and I didn't walk away with any big, like, explicit message, I still think that's
Mhm.
super valid. Um, I think it's a beautiful game, both to look at,
Yeah.
to listen to, and to play. That's my that's my final
Mhm.
point on it. Do you have a final thought? Should people play Neva?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's a it it's like a nice, I don't know, I keep saying this, palate cleanser, or like breath of fresh air, like, kind of between longer games. Like, it's nice to have a succinct and sort of, what is it called? Like, singular experience that doesn't require a huge time investment.
Mhm.
Um and it just felt like I felt refreshed, or rejuvenated after playing it. And yeah, it makes me appreciate games and the people who make them. And it makes me want to hug my pets
Yeah,
tight.
real tight. Maybe not too tight, but pretty tight. Well, this was a fun discussion. We really came back with a bang, I think, for this episode. But time is up
Bam.
for today's session of Pixel Therapy. Thank you all for tuning in, and we hope that listening to our thoughts and feelings gave you some thoughts and feelings of your own. If you want more Pixel Therapy, you can come check us out at patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can sign up for free to stay up to date on everything we have going on, including our weekly streaming schedule, or subscribe for as little as $2 a month and snag that sweet monthly bonus episode. Also, be sure to check out our Let's Play series, Pixel Therapy Plays, here on the Pixel Therapy Pod YouTube channel. You can subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications every time we go live. And of course, you can also support the show by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and following us on Twitter at Pixel Therapy Pod. That stuff is just as important, and we appreciate it.
Finally, since we like to put our money and our energy where our mouth is, we end every episode with a recommended side quest. As we have been doing over the past year, please visit tinyurl.com/op olive branch. Operation Olive Branch is a grassroots collective effort to amplify Palestinian voices and their GoFundMe's. Please visit that link, tinyurl.com/op olive branch to learn more, or visit their Instagram page at Operation Olive Branch. Online censorship is getting scarier and scarier. You know, end the genocide, ceasefire now. Until then, anything we can do to keep eyes on what's going on in Gaza is so important. And real people are there needing help wherever they can get it. So again, that's tinyurl.com/op olive branch.
Yeah. Thank you for that side quest, Spencer. That's our show for today, folks. Go forth, run a story mission, level up some stats. Don't forget to hug and then every now and then, especially if it's a little puppy. We'll be back soon with some more Pixel Therapy. Internet lag is making that tough tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
We did it.
We did it. Bye-bye.